This lesson is to teach rounding. The definition of rounding is to replace a number with a simpler number that ends in 0, fewer digits, or both. So let's look at an example. If we want to round this number to the nearest thousand, the number 84,962, first we have to use our prior knowledge of what number is in the thousands place. So we want to round to the nearest thousand. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. There we go. So we have the thousands place. You always want to look at the number right beside it. So if we look at the 9 is 5 or more, so we want to add one more to the 4. So then the 4 becomes a 5, and the last three numbers become rounded, or zeros. They become zeros. And of course you can't forget to bring down your 8, because 84,962 can't round to 5,000. It has to round to 85,000. Rounding helps to simplify whole numbers and decimals. Today we're going to focus on the whole numbers. The first method we're going to look at is using a number line to round. If we had the number 564 and we wanted to round to the nearest 10, I've already set up our number line here. The two choices we have are 560 or 570. So I'm going to go ahead and find my number 564 on the board. And then I'm going to try to decide, am I going to round to the nearest 10 to be 560 or to the nearest 10 to be 570? So first I have to make sure ones, tens, I have my tens. So it can either be 560, 570. Well, I see that there are 4 spots away. 564 is 4 spots away from 560. 6 spots away. 564 is 6 places away from 570. So we want to go ahead and round it to 560, which is closer. It gives you a nice visual that it's closer to 560. Let's look at the next example. If we want to round to the nearest 100, 47,632. So our number is a lot larger now, and we have to have a lot more spaces here. I've set it up to where I have, since we're rounding to the nearest 100, I have 100 little teeny spots on the number line. And I didn't number each of those spots because it's so teeny tiny, but I numbered for every 10. So if I want to round to the nearest 100, ones, tens, hundreds, there's my hundreds. So I want to round to the nearest 100. I can see that my choices are 47,600 or 47,700. So now let me find 47,632 on the board, on the number line. So if I go to 47,600, 10, 20, 30, and then each little line is 1, so my number is about there. 47,632 is about right here. So I have to decide how close or far from these two numbers is the number that I'm trying to round. I want to round to the closest number. So I can see, and I'm not going to count every little teeny line, but I can see there are at least 10, 20, at least 30. And I remember there was 32 because of that. So there are 32 spots. And then there are about, we'll say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And then there's 8 left here. So 68 spaces from 47,632 all the way to 47,700. So I would round it to the closest, 47,600. And you probably wouldn't want to use this method for any larger unless you're doing it on a computer or something that's a little bit easier to draw those little teeny spaces. So I have another method for you to try for those larger numbers. This is the rounding roller coaster. This may be familiar to you already. Here you are in your roller coaster, and you have to be a certain number to get over the hill, and if you're not quite that big of a number, then you're going to fall back down the hill. So if you're the numbers 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, the number will stay the same. And if you're the numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, you're going to add one more to the place. So let's look at an example. Round to the nearest 100,000. So I want to round to the nearest 100,000. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, then there is a million. So here's my 100,000s place. I want to round to the nearest 100,000s. So I'm going to look at the number beside that. It's a 4. So I know that can't make it quite over the hill. So the 2 will stay the same. So this number rounds to 1,200,000 since we're to the nearest 100,000. Another example, if I want to round to the nearest 10,000, always look for that key word, because if you only saw that it was 1,000, you missed the 10, you would have the wrong answer. So you want to make sure that you always find that key word. So if we have 65,493 and we want to round it, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. So you find your place, you look at the number beside it, and this number is a 5. So here's the 5. Oh, I get to add one more. So 6 plus 1 is 7. Let's write it over here. And the rest become rounded. So 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. And remember, 1, 2, 3, put a comma behind me. 1, 2, 3, put a comma behind me. So 65,493 rounds to 70,000. For another method, if that one doesn't work for you, I have a poem. Find your number, get your magnifying glass out, find your number, look right next door at the next number. If the number is 4 or less, think back to your rounding roller coaster, just let it rest so the number stays the same. 5 or more, raise the score. You get to add one more to that number. So let's look at an example. If I want to round both of these numbers to the nearest 1,000, 29,274. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. So here's my thousands. If I first find my number, I underline it. Then I'm going to look right next door. So I'm going to draw my arrow. And you probably saw me doing this on the last board because you always have to look at that number right next door. So it's the same process. We're just using a poem to help us remember the process. So find your number, look right next door, 4 or less. So I'm trying to see the number that I'm looking at. I'm only looking at the 2. Is the 2 4 or less? Yes, it is. So I'm going to let it rest. I'm not going to let the 2 rest. I'm going to let the 9 rest. So that 9 will stay a 9. Well, let's go ahead and write it over here. That 9 will stay a 9. These 3 numbers become rounded, hence the name. And of course, 29,274 can't round to just 9,000. Imagine if that was money. If someone says, about how much money do you have? You wouldn't say, oh, about $9,000. No, you would say $29,000. Whew, can't lose that place. And then the next example, find your number, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Underline that, look right next door, draw your arrow right next door. The number you're looking at Is it 4 or less? No. Is it 5 or more? Yes. So we need to raise the score. We need to add 1 more. So the 6 plus 1 becomes a 7. The rest become rounded. And don't forget the digits that are to the left. Keep the 2, keep the 3. So this number rounds to 327,000. All right, and that is your rounding poem.